Imagine if all the oxygen on Earth suddenly disappeared. Not forever, just for 5 seconds. Sounds harmless, right? It's such a short amount of time that you might think nothing could really go wrong. But what if I told you that those 5 seconds would be enough to throw the entire planet into chaos? From the air we breathe to the structures around us, oxygen plays a critical role in keeping our world intact. In this video, we're going to explore exactly what would happen if Earth lost oxygen for just 5 seconds. Welcome to What If, where we dive into fascinating, mind-blowing scenarios that make you wonder, what if this really happened? Get ready, because what you're about to learn will blow your mind. Oxygen might not be the most abundant gas in our atmosphere, but it is definitely the most important. It makes up about 21% of the air we breathe, with nitrogen taking up most of the rest at 78%. This small percentage of oxygen is what keeps us, and everything else on Earth, alive. Without oxygen, plants couldn't survive, animals wouldn't exist, and water as we know it wouldn't even form. It's the foundation of life, binding everything together. It's also the invisible force that holds many of the materials we rely on every day, like concrete, in place. Oxygen isn't just something we breathe, it's what keeps the Earth and everything on it functioning. Take a deep breath and feel how satisfying that is. Now imagine a world where that crucial breath isn't possible, even for just 5 seconds. That's how much we rely on oxygen, and without it, the results would be catastrophic. At first, you might think that losing oxygen for 5 seconds wouldn't be a big deal. After all, most of us can hold our breath for at least 30 seconds without any trouble. So, you might assume that your body wouldn't even notice the change. And you'd be right. Your breathing would actually stay normal during those 5 seconds. Your lungs wouldn't panic, and you wouldn't feel like you were suffocating. But while your body might not feel the immediate impact, everything around you would be falling apart. In those 5 seconds, the world would start to transform in ways you wouldn't believe. What seems like a tiny, harmless moment to us would trigger events so extreme that the Earth would never look the same again. This is where the real chaos begins. If oxygen disappeared for just 5 seconds, the world around us would start collapsing almost instantly. First, every structure made of concrete would crumble to dust. Concrete relies on oxygen as a binding agent, so without it, massive landmarks like the Hoover Dam and the Pantheon Dome would fall apart in the blink of an eye. Roads, bridges, and buildings would lose their strength and collapse right before your eyes. But it wouldn't stop there. Metals would start behaving in strange and terrifying ways. Normally, metals are coated with a thin layer of oxidation that prevents them from sticking together. Without oxygen, that layer would vanish, and untreated metals would immediately fuse together. Imagine metal beams and structures suddenly welding themselves into one giant, immovable mass. The effects wouldn't just be on the ground. If you were outside enjoying a sunny day, you'd suddenly be hit by severe UV radiation. That's because the ozone layer, which protects us from the sun's harmful rays, is made entirely of oxygen. Without it, there would be nothing to shield us, and the sun's UV rays would hit you directly, causing painful sunburns in just seconds. All of this chaos would happen so fast that you wouldn't even have time to react. The absence of oxygen, even for such a short time, would tear apart the world as we know it. And this is only the beginning. If oxygen disappeared for 5 seconds, it wouldn't just stop at collapsing structures and fusing metals. The very atmosphere around us would start to fail. First, you'd notice the air pressure dropping drastically. Oxygen makes up 21% of our air pressure, and losing it would feel like being suddenly transported 2,000 meters down a mountain. This rapid change would be too much for your body to handle. Your inner ears, which help you balance, wouldn't have enough time to adjust, and they would likely burst from the pressure difference. The pain would be intense and disorienting. Next, you'd see something truly eerie. The sky would turn completely dark. Normally, sunlight bounces off particles in the atmosphere, scattering light and making the sky appear blue. But without oxygen, there would be far fewer particles for the sunlight to bounce off, leaving the sky pitch black in the middle of the day. It would feel like you'd suddenly been plunged into nighttime. And then everything that relies on fire would stop working. Combustion, the process that powers vehicles and keeps fires burning, needs oxygen. Without it, engines in cars, planes, and trains would instantly fail. Millions of vehicles would come to a sudden halt, and planes would fall from the sky. The world would become eerily silent as all these systems collapsed. In just 5 seconds, the atmosphere and everything we rely on would fall apart. These tiny moments would bring about changes that could never be undone. But it doesn't stop here. There's an even greater disaster waiting to unfold. If oxygen disappeared for just 5 seconds, the damage wouldn't stop at buildings collapsing, vehicles failing, or the sky turning dark. The very foundation of our planet, the Earth's crust, would begin to fall apart. That's because the crust, which is the outermost layer of our planet, is made up of 45% oxygen. It's the single most important element holding the crust together. Without oxygen, the crust wouldn't be able to maintain its structure. It would begin to crumble, breaking apart into pieces and collapsing entirely. This wouldn't just affect the ground beneath your feet. As the crust crumbles, it would trigger a chain reaction that would devastate the entire planet. Mountains, valleys, and even the ocean floor would disintegrate, leaving nothing stable to stand on. You, along with everyone else, would be sent into a terrifying free fall as the earth itself literally crumbled away beneath you. In these few seconds, the very structure of our world would collapse, and life as we know it would cease to exist. All of this from the absence of a single element for just 5 seconds. It's hard to imagine how something so brief could cause so much destruction, but it shows just how vital oxygen is, not only to life, but to the stability of our planet itself. Now, after imagining all that chaos, here's the good news. You don't need to worry about this ever happening. Oxygen disappearing from Earth, even for 5 seconds, is an impossible scenario. Our planet has systems in place that keep oxygen levels stable, ensuring that we can breathe, live, and thrive. So, while it's fascinating to think about the what-ifs, it's also comforting to know that oxygen isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Take a moment to appreciate that deep breath you just took. That 21% of oxygen in our atmosphere is more than just air. It's what makes life on Earth possible. It binds our world together, protects us from harmful radiation, and keeps the systems we rely on running smoothly. It's one of those things we often take for granted but couldn't survive without. If this thought experiment has shown us anything, it's how interconnected everything on Earth truly is. From the air we breathe to the ground we stand on, every part of our planet relies on oxygen in some way. So, the next time you look up at the blue sky, take a moment to appreciate the delicate balance that keeps our world intact. It's a reminder of just how lucky we are to call this planet home. Thankfully, we don't have to live in fear of oxygen disappearing. The idea of losing it for even 5 seconds is just a fascinating what-if scenario. But it also helps us realize how much we depend on this invisible, life-giving gas. Oxygen isn't just something we breathe in. It's the glue holding our planet together. It's in the air, the water, the ground, and even the very structures we've built our lives around. Without it, life as we know it wouldn't exist. But what makes this thought experiment so incredible is how it reminds us of the delicate balance of our world. Everything on Earth is connected, from the smallest breath to the largest mountain. Even something as tiny as a 5-second loss of oxygen could lead to unimaginable destruction. It's proof of just how powerful and vital oxygen truly is. So, while you don't need to worry about this ever happening, it's a great reminder to be curious about the world around us. Nature is full of these incredible systems that we often take for granted, and thinking about what-ifs like this can help us appreciate just how extraordinary our planet really is. For more wild, mind-blowing scenarios like this, make sure to stick with us here on What If. The possibilities are endless, and the curiosity never stops.